Well, greetings and salutations. Today, I'm going to make a video talking about some of the tools that I use to do the bus. Obviously, the bus isn't done at the point of this taping, but most of the metal work has been done and completed, and I wanted to share some of the tools that I use to do the majority of the metalworking on this bus build. Now, there'll be a link in the end card to the playlist if you haven't seen it. And you can go through and watch the progress. I started about Christmas time last year. I've had it for just over a year. I did a 16-inch roof raise, took out all the bus windows and put RV windows in it, and I used my extensive tool arsenal to do this build. Now, some of you may have these tools and some of you may not, and understand that you don't have to buy all these tools to do a bus build, but it might help to know somebody with these tools. So now these are going to be the metal working tools that I use to do the roof raise, the woodworking tools that I'm using to do the conversion, the actual conversion on the inside will be covered in another video. I'm going to break these tools into a couple different categories. You got metal cutting tools, metal shaping tools, and then tools to fasten those cut and shaped bits to whatever you're building. So let's start with the cutting tools. What I have here is a PowerMax Hypotherm plasma cutter. I've had this particular one for about 10 years, and it's a 30 amp machine. It's dual voltage, so it runs on either 110 or 220 simply by taking the power cord here and switching out the ends. This one has the 220 cord on it. And at 110 volts it can cut up to 20 amps, which is basically sheet metal. Most of the tools that I have are sheet metal related, so this one's not very good for cutting real thick stuff over 1/4 inch, but it'll cut up to 3/8, I think. That's what this thing is rated for, up to 3/8. These run about $1,000. They ain't cheap, and there are some cheaper alternatives, and I would recommend that before you go out to Harbor Freight and buy one of theirs, or Eastwood and buy those cheap Chinese knockoffs, find out what kind of torch they're using and how much the consumables cost and how available they are, because you can buy a cheap Chinese import plasma cutter only to find out that the savings in the initial purchase is negated by the unavailability of consumables, or the availability of replacement parts. Believe it or not, most of the metal cutting that I've done on this bus, with few exceptions, has been with this machine. I use this a lot. And then I also have an abrasive cutoff wheel. The abrasive cutoff wheel, this one's a 14-inch Makita. It makes short work of the tubing that I use to do the bus build, but it's a very dirty machine, meaning that as you cut through the material, this is eroding away, the abrasive wheel, and you're getting all the slag and stuff from the metal, and it tends to make a mess. I try to use this outdoors because it just makes a mess in the garage. You can get a cutoff saw like this for under 200 bucks, and this will help you take big pieces, cut them into smaller pieces. For some of the more precise and precision cutting, I used a 4.5 inch grinder with a 1/8 inch cutoff wheel. I use this to cut a lot of the 1 inch to specific lengths, and if I had to cut an angle on something. Believe it or not, I didn't use this very often at all. I hate these things. They're violent and they don't cut very straight. This one I bought in '92 when I first started as a foreman. It still works, but I prefer smarter, not harder. I got some specialty tools here left over from my post frame building days. I've got this old Ketch shears. This one's a model K20. You can get these for around 140 bucks. They also sell replacement jaws on these. When they get dull, you can replace the jaws for about 40 bucks. Obviously, I need to invest a little time and money into a new cord on this one, but this one works good for cutting flat steel in a straight line. These are nibblers. These are made by Fein, F-E-I-N. These are a German company. These are expensive, but I haven't found a nibbler set that can compete with this one in terms of inches per feet of cut, and it just gnaws through metal. And most of the metal that I use this for professionally is 29 gauge pole barn steel, which is really thin, but this goes through that 20 gauge that I put on the bus like butter. And this will cut up to, I believe, 18 gauge. The consumables are very expensive. The head and pin, if you buy them together, run around $100. The pin itself is like 40 bucks. So it ain't cheap to use, but if you're cutting metal professionally, this is the one to have for sure. So that's the cutting tools that I used, and here's one of the fastening tools that I used. And this is how you fasten metal to metal using electricity. And this is a Lincoln Electric Power MIG 215. It's really way more welder than I need for the kind of work that I've been doing on the bus. The machine that I had before this was a Lincoln WeldPack 100, and that just about covered everything that I could ever want to do, short of you know, structural stuff over 1/4 inch. So basically everything that I did on this bus I could have done with a WeldPack 100 or something comparable. I kind of regret buying this one. That's really too much welder for what I usually weld with. Anything over 1/4 inch I could use my TIG welder, which is also a stick welder, and I used the TIG on a couple of little things on the bus, but primarily all the structural work that I've done on this bus with repairing the floors, doing the roof raise, fabricating some of the doors and stuff, I use primarily this and some of the welds that are on the doors. Well, if you're not going to use electricity to bond two pieces of metal together, the other method of fastening two pieces of metal together is with mechanical fasteners. I used a lot of self-tapping screws to screw the steel onto the side of the bus after it was raised, and then I used a lot of rivets. These are some of the leftover aluminum rivets I used to do mock-up, and they're just simple wide flange 3/16 pop rivets, but the majority of the rivets that I used in the final attachment were stainless steel 3/16 pop rivets. And when you start getting into some of the bigger rivets like this with the wide flange, it becomes apparent that if you're going to do more than a 25 or 50, that this is kind of an antiquated way of attaching pop rivets. So I bought one of these from Harbor Freight, and this one's rated up to 3/16. And to be honest with you, I can't believe I waited this long to get one of these. It's worked great. It was definitely worth the $35 it cost me to buy this. And then, of course, the other way is to use, you know, a cordless drill. Or the thing about cordless tools is if you don't have the money to invest in extra batteries, the limiting factor here is going to be the battery. I bought this 3 amp hour lithium ion battery for, I think this thing costs almost $100. So that's kind of the limiting factor here is the batteries, and they go dead, right? So you need to have something that you can back it up with, because it's kind of frustrating sometimes to be right in the middle of something and you're in the groove, the battery goes dead, you got to wait an hour before you can get started again. Have a corded backup. Which just leaves us with shaping tools. Really the only thing that I needed to shape was that radius on all 4 corners. And I did that. That's 20 gauge steel. I did that over my knee. There's a section of this corner from about here down to here that I replaced. I cut it all out and welded in 16 gauge. That was a little harder to shape. And I did that basically over the edge of a bench with some clamps and angle iron. And I took a gauge, a shape gauge. I got that profile, and then I just kept bending it and bending that piece of steel to that profile until I got the radius right, and then I welded it in place. This is probably still from the profile in that corner over there. I just ran this on the existing profile, and then I used this profile on the piece that I made to match up the profile. And you can use these, you just line it up with something and push it into place, and these fingers move. There's actually better ones out there. This one was from Harbor Freight, and I bought this like, geez, 2003. I didn't pay much for them. I think like $10. But it's been an invaluable tool. It allows me to duplicate shapes. Having an assortment of hammers, this rubber, some dead blow hammers, metal shaping hammers like these. I bought this set from Harbor Freight. for a song. It was like came with 7 components, like 4 hammers and 3 dollies. And if you're not doing metalworking professionally, these are a bargain. You're going to need an assortment of clamps. One tool that was invaluable, especially on panels that were being made, like around the generator compartment door and the new battery box door. those rear panels were pretty rusty, and I had to make repair panels. And while I was fitting those, I used these Klecos, and it's a way to temporarily attach a panel through a hole. These are not aviation quality, these are just cheap knockoffs, but I think I bought a set with 6 different sizes of Klecos, 25 of each size, for like 60 bucks. And that really was an invaluable tool, especially when you're working alone. You gotta have a way to hold something in place while you're doing measurements and cutting and stuff like that. Get some Klecos. Also, having a good assortment of hand tools. You don't have to have a toolbox that big, but having some basic hand tools like wrenches and sockets. And if you're really limited to space and want to get the most bang for your buck, I would recommend that you get 6-point sockets and not 12-point sockets. 12-point sockets allow you a more broad range of movement, but they tend to round off nuts and bolts. So get 6-point sockets and 6-point box head wrenches. You know, get combination wrenches. If you got the money and the space, in conjunction with some basic combination wrenches and sockets, get some gear wrenches. Those are always handy. So this is just some of the tools that I've used. Don't forget tin snips. They are what they are. I recommend Weiss. Okay, one final subset of tools: finishing tools. The paint equipment that I used, the Harbor Freight HVLP guns. You know, I had nothing but high praise for these guns before I bought one that didn't live up to my expectations, and I guess that's to be expected for a $10 paint gun. It's important to note that they have 3 different part numbers on their website. You need to make sure you get item number 67181, and not to say that any of the other part numbers won't work, but I found that this particular part number has the best cup, and what you want is the one with this brass bit, because the one that I had that didn't turn out so well, this is cast into the body and not removable, and I didn't realize that. Went to go clean the spray gun and ended up just trashing the threads trying to get this off, and there's no way to get it off. It was part of the body of the gun. Unless you're painting cars for a living, don't go out and spend $150 or more on a professional spray gun. I mean, you can if you want to. I know I did. And I had a really nice Davelbus Millennium Series spray gun that I bought brand new when I did the first frame off on this red truck. I think I paid pretty close to $500 for it. And when I lived in North Las Vegas, somebody walked into my garage one day when I was in taking a crap or something and stole it. But believe it or not, the only tools that I used to paint this bus was one of these HVLP guns, a DA sander, and for the short period of time that I was without a HVLP gun, I used my old siphon feed Davelbus from circa 1984. Still works. But really, $10 spray gun, a $35 DA, for most people is going to be more than enough. And finally, probably the most productive tool that you can have is a supportive family. In my case, I've got a wife that supports this endeavor, and a network of friends that are willing to help you. Unfortunately, I don't have a network of friends here in Pahrump that are willing to help me do my bus build, and I have a real hard time asking for help anyway. But if you have a network of friends that you can get rallying around you to help you, many hands make light work. So get your friends involved, get your family involved. And a lot of this stuff will take care of itself. You'd be surprised how many people you know that have stuff like this. They'd be more than willing to allow you to borrow them or have them come over and help you using their tools. So down in the corner there, there's a box that says subscribe. Go ahead and click on the subscribe button, and then right next to it's a picture of the bell. Ring the bell and you'll be notified next upload. So stay tuned for the next video where I talk about some of the carpentry tools that I use. I hope this video was entertaining and informative, and if I succeeded in that endeavor, give me a thumbs up. If I failed, give me a thumbs down. Either way is okay with me. And until next time, you have fun, stay safe, shoot straight, keep your powder dry, and have a splendid day. Okay. Lots of tools, no friends.